We want to thank you so much for joining us today and welcome you into Aspire to Retire with Ralph Short and Tim Short of Welcome Home Financial Partners. Their website, welcomehomefp.com. You can find out more about Ralph, about Tim, the entire team. Welcome Home Financial Partners. Also set up a time to speak with them there. Begin that retirement roadmap process. Or you can give a call if you like, 804-635-3550. Just by listening, tuning in to the show, you're showing that you're taking your retirement planning seriously. Maybe you are, in fact, aspiring to retire, but you don't know where to get started. That's the number. That's the best place to start, 804-635-3550. My name is Chris Swan, and I'm pleased to be joined, as always, by the father-son team behind Welcome Home Financial Partners, Ralph and Tim. Glad to be with you. How you doing today?
Doing great. How about you?
Doing wonderful as always. How about yourself?
Doing well. Just talking the other day, my son, the school year is getting ready to wind down. It's hard to believe that I'm going to have a fourth grader coming up, going into the next year. He's going to be 10 in a little bit, and that is having a hard time dealing with that these days. But it's a big milestone. A lot of great changes along the way, and there's a lot of people out there who probably don't have a 10-year-old in their household, but they are getting ready to perhaps retire or again aspire to retire for that next great chapter in their life. And we appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to spend with them, offer them a little bit of insight. Let's start off by talking about something that I think has dominated the news cycle and the financial cycle a lot lately, but it is constantly relevant. And there have been some developments recently. Tariffs, of course, is what we're talking about here. They've definitely had an effect on the markets. The Dow was down about 16% from its February high. It's bounced back a good bit. And the question is, how did you react? You listening out there, how did you react? Did you sell and go to cash? Did you move money at all? Well, Vanguard says only 8.4% of their investors did any trading whatsoever. Most of them just kind of stayed the course. Buyers, in fact, outnumbered sellers 5-1. So overall, people as a whole didn't panic. Great job out there. But let's turn this more local and directly. The clients at Welcome Home Financial Partners, how did they react?
Well, it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of folks out there that get fearful with the uncertainty of what tomorrow's going to bring. But we've seen some swings over the last few weeks, and what the most important thing, and I kind of tell everybody this, is as long as you believe in your strategies and your investments, most of the times you can just stay the course, right? Because you never know what tomorrow will bring. You don't know if it's going to be a positive day or a negative day. It kind of feels like it's flip-flopping at this point in time, day in and day out. But it's important to make sure, because once you start getting emotional, and we've talked about this quite a few times, but once you start getting emotional and you get concerned and uncertain, most people are going to try to sell out and keep the money in cash. Well, the problem with that is if tomorrow we have a 3% rebound like we saw Monday this week, or an 8% rebound like we saw a few weeks ago, you're going to miss out on that. And I think, a lot of people just get so concerned about their money that they start doing things that maybe, we talk about it a little bit, is we can sit there and hold hand people, right? So hold your hand, kind of talk you through some things. A lot of clients have some protection built inside their portfolios, so they don't have a whole lot to worry about, but it also depends on your time. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, is they try to time the market, whether you're trying to be aggressive or whether you're trying to be conservative. I think a lot of people try to do it either way. And, once again, if there's fear mixed in there, people are going to sell out. Well, there's a lot of people who are going to buy in. I mean, the 5-1 ratio of buyers versus the sellers, that means that there's a lot of people that have some confidence, and they're doing the old rule of buying low and selling high, right? So I think everybody's going to be in a different position, but once again, it's not trying to time the market, because you're not going to get it right every time. There might be some times where you do, make some money, or there's going to be some times where you get out at the right time. But, it's more important, it's this retirement thing that we talk about quite a bit. And yes, I said retirement thing. It's not a day trading situation, right? You want to make sure that you don't get caught up in that and trying to, parlay your retirement, if you will.
And what I would say to most people is, everybody's been reacting emotionally. You have to understand how the market works. And we do have to talk some people off the ledge because they get kind of panicky, particularly if you've really never had anybody to help you do a few things. Because if you just have your money in a 401k, or you're doing it through a robo-advisor, things like that, there's nobody for you to talk to. So all of a sudden you just kind of react emotionally, and sometimes that doesn't work. And a lot of people need to understand you have to have a purpose for what your money is to be used for. You just can't let greed and say, I want it to grow more and more and more. You've got to take a strategy of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And I think the biggest people that were the losers in all this has been, from everything that I've seen, is the big hedge fund planners, because they all knew that we were going to continue down the bear market, and they're not taking advantage of everything that we talk to people about. Stay the course, understand what your purpose is, understand your plan, because your investment statement is not your plan. You have to have a plan of where you put your money, when you're going to need the money, and how do you take the money out, because your income plan in retirement is more important than your investment strategy, because now you got to figure out when to take your money, how to take it, and just understand that things are going to change. I wish everything would continue to go up for the rest of your life, but
Wouldn't that be nice?
yeah, it just goes up and it goes down, and you just kind of have to stay the course. And all the strategies that you got, it does, let's just say it takes a great deal of fortitude when the market goes down like it did for those 6 or 8 weeks to stay the course. But with help from your advisor who understands what you're trying to do, you can kind of get through those rough patches when you've lost, $50,000 and $60,000, just like a gentleman we had come in, I talked to, and he was fixing to retire. He was moving his money, and all of a sudden, all this market dropped, and he's panicking about, what should I do? What should I do? He said, I've already got the money coming to me. I said, well, it's kind of late to do anything, but understand when the market goes down, you're buying into a lower market. So when the market goes back up, you're going to make more money. So no matter what happens on either side of your money, it will take the appreciation, even though that the money that you thought you were going to get from the rollover is not as big. It will be bigger on the other side.
Yeah, and I think that's where, Chris, we see it quite a bit is people, well, there's a lot of volatility. Is now the right time to do it? And my answer is there's never the right time, right? Because we have no idea what tomorrow's going to bring. So, if the strategy that we're looking to do is of importance to you and it can protect your retirement, then why wait any longer, right? And that kind of goes back to time in the market. But, when it comes to sticking to plan or staying the course or sticking to the script, the bear markets are usually shorter than the bull markets anyway. So ever since the mid 60s, the average bear market has only lasted about 15 months on average, and the bull market is about 6 years. So I think that's, can kind of put some people to ease to a point. But once again, it's all about the time that you're in the market and what time do you have for retirement. Because, we've picked on 20-year-olds in previous episodes, but, if you're 20 years old, we're not super worried about it. In fact, if you're in your 20s, you need to be funneling more money into the market now, right? And that's what I think people don't quite understand. I was actually mentioning to somebody a couple weeks ago is it almost kind of feels like reverse psychology to a lot of people, because when things are going bad, they want to get out. But when things are going good, that's when they want to get in. Well, guess what? That's the old thing of now you're buying high and selling low. So that's where I think a lot of people need to kind of stay the course, get a grip, take a deep breath, give us a call, and we can kind of walk them through it.
Hey, Chris, we didn't mean to talk about you in the 20-year-olds, okay? Just so you'll know. So.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that when you were talking about your son. But, the school years are winding down, and I'm about to have my middle one graduate from high school, and then the other one will be a junior. So I understand, and time does go by rather quickly.
But at the same time, people really do need to understand greed can get in the way for a lot of your decisions. You just kind of have to have a strategy, stick with the strategy, and understand if you do have any questions, you should have an advisor, a fiduciary that can kind of help guide you and make you understand what's going on. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we've been seeing over the last few weeks, there's been no economic, let's just say, knowledge that it should be going down like that. It's just all emotion. Everybody said, well, this is not going to work, so the market went down, or somebody said, well, this might work, and it goes up. It's just all emotion. Knee-jerk reaction. That's the worst thing that you can do when it comes to your strategies, either retirement and income strategies or your investment strategy.
And don't forget about the political emotions too. There's a lot to do with that.
I don't talk politics. It's not worth anybody's time to talk politics. But anyway, Just understand what your strategies are. Stick with the plan. If it's a good plan, that's one thing that you have to make sure you do have a plan and you understand what that plan is, how it's going to affect you down the road. Because unless you're an unusual person, you really don't want to run out of money in your retirement years. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Have you had anyone ever come in and say, I want to run out of money, in the first couple of years of my retirement, and I want to fret for however long my retirement's going to be?
Not yet, but I do.
You never know,
I
right?
will say to you, there have been a lot of people say, I do not want to have $1 left in my retirement account when I leave this earth, and I don't believe my kids or my grandkids. I don't want them to have any of this money because I've earned it. There are a few people like that in this world.
Yeah, there are a few people, but I don't believe we're ever going to come across somebody that says, I want to run out of money in my first couple of years of retirement because, hey, that's not what we plan to do. So we're going to have to put you elsewhere.
And that's not a client that we aspire to have either.
Exactly. That's to be aspiring to retire and then have to go back into the workforce. And that's a whole other different show. We're not talking about that here. This isn't political. We're not talking politics here, but there was a mayor in New York in the 70s, Ed Koch, and his he was famous for saying, "How am I doing?" That was his thing, and that was kind of a litmus test for how people felt about him. And I think it's the same sort of thing when people are retired or they're on their way towards retirement. They want to know how they're doing. They want to know if the market takes a downturn, are they still going to be okay at the end of the day? If you have a plan in place, a proper plan in place, then hopefully you have a little bit more of that confidence to know, yeah, that's what's going on behind the scenes, but I know that the income is still coming in. I know that this has been accounted for, and that is what the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners does with everyone. There is a bit of hand-holding if necessary, because the first couple times that you see a market downturn, it can make you nervous because you've not done this before, retired before. But, as time goes on, feeling more confident knowing this has been accounted for, this has been part of the plan. So if the past couple months has made you nervous, has made you feel a little uneasy, understandable, fair, but take a step back, reach out, start developing that plan or refining a plan if you already have one with the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners. It's really easy to do. It's a complimentary conversation. All you have to do is pick up the phone and give a call, 804-635-3550. Warren Buffett, famous for a lot of quotes, but the one that comes to mind right now is you want to be fearful when others are being greedy, be greedy when others are being fearful. Fear has certainly crept into the conversation lately. Maybe a good time to look at perhaps investing, but also making sure that it works best for your plan. So again, that number, 804-635-3550, or online at welcomehomefp.com. Blue-collar comedy alum Bill Engvall, he actually retired 2 years ago from stand-up, and it's long enough that he feels qualified to weigh in and offer a couple of retirement tips of his own.
Number one, you're going to find that you have a lot of time on your hands. Now, I thought that meant I'd have more time for golf or fishing or whatever I love to do. But as it turns out, it's just more time for me to spend with my wife, like driving her to the hair salon, driving her to the nail salon, or just doing things together like talking to the grocery store shopping cart guy. I know his name now. Why? Because I've had to drive my wife to the grocery store so many more times. So as you go through retirement, remember this, you have a lot of time, but it's not yours. Happy retirement.
I also have to wonder if perhaps he's driving his wife crazy with these observations. I'm not sure, but retirement does change everything, especially at home. How often have you guys had helped a couple sit down and have the talk about what retirement actually looks like beyond the financial aspect of it?
I would say more times than not, it may not be just couples. It may be one of the individuals that's fixing to retire. Mm-hmm. One of the gentlemen that retired about a year or so ago, we had this conversation after we did the roadmap process for him and showing him he was in good shape financially. And I happened to mention to him, I said, now you do understand there's another side of the coin here. When it comes to retirement, it's called social interactions. It's called emotional, mental, whatever you want to call it. For most people, their social interactions are with people at work because we work more hours in a day than a lot of people do. So you don't have a lot of time after work to go socialize. At least I don't. Maybe some other people will. But anyway, so I warned him a little bit about it, and he said, "Oh no, I'll be fine. Be fine." So a year went by, and he came back in for his annual review, and we were talking. He goes, "I can't stand it anymore, Ralph. I can't stand it." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I just can't stand being at home with my wife anymore. All she wants to do is talk about this, talk about that. I just need to get out and go do something other than just sitting at home. I said, well, didn't we have a conversation about that? He goes, yes, and you're right. So I'm going back to work part-time just so I can have somebody else to talk to besides my wife. And it's a good thing I'm not going to share his name with you.
Right. I was hoping that wasn't going to happen. But yeah, there was actually, and I don't know if I've said this story or not, but I had a gentleman who called in from a television show a few months ago, and he worked for a major trucking company here in the area. And he came in, and we're starting the first meeting, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm looking to retire in the next couple of months." And I said, "Okay, well, good for you." And he had been with this trucking company, I think it was like 41 years, if I'm not mistaken. And working, he was a mechanic, so working long hours, right? Probably average 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. He's done it for forever, loves his job, but now it's getting to the point where, it's taking a toll on his body, and he's ready to go. So I said, "Okay, well, what about your wife? Is your wife still working?" And he goes, "Yeah, she's still working right now." And I go, "Okay, well, when she's planning on retiring?" She goes, "Same time as me." And I go, "Really? Okay." So how long has she been working? "Oh, she's been working about the same amount of time as me." And I was like, "Okay, how long you guys been married?" "About 42 years. "Okay, fair enough." I said, "On average, how many hours have you guys spent together in the same spot in a week?" And he goes, "Huh, I see your point." He goes, "So that means the two of us are going to have more time together." And he goes, "Huh, okay, I think she might start retirement first, and then it might be me second." And I will tell you, still has not gotten back in for the second meeting. So I'm thinking that he might be delaying his retirement now. But, in all seriousness, there's a lot to that, because not only is financially things going to change, but also emotionally, and your personal life is completely different. And I agree. I don't know if we're going to be shuttling our spouses back and forth or not, but it almost kind of sounded like he was driving his wife somewhere in that clip. It sounded like he was on speakerphone in his car. But I know a lot of people think that, hey, I'm going to have all this time, but now their grandkids are here, or their kids are here, or their friends are here, and now it's, running errands or doing this, or, hey, can you go pick up little Johnny from, baseball practice or whatever. So a lot of people have less time. Their calendar's more full once they retire, because now everybody knows, quote unquote, that they've got extra time that they can help out. So, there's a lot to do with retirement, and you've got to do the best that you can do to try to prepare yourself for not just the financial side, but also the emotional aspect, and trying to figure out what to do. Because the one thing that kind of amazes me, Chris, is that there's a lot of people that I ask them, "Well, what do you want to do when you retire? Tell me what retirement means to you." And they're like, "Well, hell, I don't know. I got to find something to do. I got to find hobbies." And I'm like, "You've worked all of that time and you didn't have any other kind of hobby?" It's like, "No, my time off was just downtime." And I'm like, "Well, okay." So I think a lot of people fall into that category, is they don't necessarily know what retirement's going to look like, right? They come see us, they want to talk about their finances, but they don't really know the personal side. And, hey, maybe I pick up pickleball, or maybe I do go golf, or whatever. There's a lot of people that don't have the time necessarily to do that while they're working.
Yeah, I would also say, Chris, it's kind of like one of the gentlemen that came in, and we were talking about a couple of things, and he goes, "Let me ask you a question. I've been retired for a couple of years now, and all this time and stuff that we thought we had, do you know what that means?" That means it allows you to have more time to go to the doctors these days, because every time we turn around, we're having to go to the doctor and shuttle each other back and forth. So, I mean, that's just life happening, and you just kind of have to get prepared for it. But it is something that a lot of people do not take in consideration, that you will have a lot of time on your hands, and sitting at home, twiddling your thumbs in front of a TV and eating probably things that you shouldn't eat, or it's going to increase your weight or your cholesterol or things like that. That's just life, and you just have to figure out what's best for you. And it's not something that a robo-advisor or just an investment broker is going to be able to talk to you about, or will want to talk to you about. It's just, we talk to people about life and life changes in retirement and what that's going to mean to you. So those are things that as a fiduciary, taking your best interest at heart does help people out. Would you not agree, Tim?
No, I agree with that. And, I think it just kind of comes down to, everybody's individual situation, what they want to do. Because, Chris, I know whatever you want to do once you retire is going to be different than me, going to be different than Dad and whoever else, right? But there's a lot of things. There's a big onion, and you got to peel back the layers. And I don't think anybody really fully understands that until they're getting closer, because it's like, oh, okay, well, I've been used to, my taxes coming out of my paycheck, so I don't think about taxes until April 15th when we're pulling our hair out, and my employer is paying me, but now, I got to be self-reliant, and I didn't really think about that because I'm just trying to build up this big number on my statement. And, there's just a lot to it, and I don't think anybody really anticipates, the planning that goes into it. And we find it quite a bit is a lot of people will spend hours upon hours, planning a vacation or whatever, instead of taking a couple meetings and sitting down and planning out the rest of your life. What's more important, because there's going to be vacations probably in that retirement too.
Should be,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of people feel like it's a daunting task, and it's really not, but you got to start the conversation, especially right now, with the market volatility and the tariff conversation and everything else, now is the best time, right? If there's uncertainty, instead of you, pulling your hair out and saying, hey, guess what? Now I'm just going to sell out of the market. I'm retiring next year. I'm just going to keep everything out. Well, what if we have a massive rebound in the market for the rest of the year, right? Then you're going to miss out on that. So there's a lot of things that we can help with that people aren't really quite aware of, because they're only taking a look at their 401k or their IRAs or whatever, and they're not really taking full advantage of everything that's out there.
And I would say one of the clients that comes to mind when Tim was just talking about right then was he was fixing to retire. He's done pretty good. He's got about $3 million in his retirement accounts, and we were going through our process, the roadmap, and talking about a few things. And I was explaining, what the retirement process is like and what you're going to have to do, because you do have a pension, you do have Social Security, when to collect those things and how to do it and all that. And he kind of looked at me at the next meeting that we had and he goes, you know what? I had no idea that retiring is so difficult to understand and achieve, because we just thought that we would walk away and have this pot of money. But now you're saying that we have to consider this, and this decision has to be made, and that decision. This is a lot more difficult than anybody ever explained to us before. And we really appreciate it.
There's certainly a lot of moving parts when it comes to your retirement. And yes, the financial part of it is a pretty significant component. Whatever you're going to do in retirement, for the most part, is going to involve, some form of cost to it. But there's also the emotional side. What are you going to do with all of that free time? More time with your spouse. And I know we kind of joked about it, and Bill Engvall kind of joked about it here. This is not to dissuade people from spending more time with your spouse by any means, but going from barely seeing them aside from the dinner table and maybe on the weekends to being there together, it's a change. It's a transition in and of itself, and that could come with some other, I don't want to say challenges, but perhaps challenges. As we're entering into summer, I mentioned, my son getting ready to go into the fourth grade. Summertime, we got plans. We're going to do a couple great things, but I know that a month or two in, he is going to inevitably say, I'm bored. He can only sit around and, go outside, ride his bike, and go to the museum so many times. But that's just like 2 months. Retirement is hopefully going to be a lot longer than 2 months. We're talking, 15, 20, 30 years. And there may be lulls in there where you're not entirely sure what you want to do. But for at least the first couple of years, have an idea of what you want to do. And I have to imagine the majority of the people out there, they've daydreamed about it at some point. When I punch out for the last time, this is the first thing I want to do. Bring those conversations to the table when you sit down and speak with the team of Welcome Home Financial Partners, and let them begin to craft that plan around that to try to make that retirement dream into a retirement reality. It's not to say that has to be the entirety of your retirement. Plans are going to change. We're all different from who we were a couple of years ago, but you want a plan that could change with you. But at the end of the day, you need to have that plan, and it all starts with that phone call. 804-635-3550, that complimentary phone call, might I add. 804-635-3550. You can also go online to the website, find out about the schedule when Ralph and Tim are on TV throughout the week, and set up a time to speak with them right there as well. That is at welcomehomefp.com. One of the products on Shark Tank recently hit it pretty big. In 2018, there was a couple that pitched a soft drink called Poppy that caught the interest of one of the investors. Well, Pepsi just bought Poppy for, get ready for this, $1.7 billion. I don't think a lot of our listeners out there have the billion, let alone multi-million-dollar idea that's going to get sold to a major soft drink conglomerate like that. But you could receive an inheritance or sell a property or a business and end up holding what could arguably be the biggest check of your life. Gentlemen, have you dealt with that before with clients, and how have you helped them, counsel them on what to do there?
Yeah, we've seen it before. I think the biggest thing is the inheritance that nobody was really anticipating, whether it was, life insurance or, maybe cash in a safe deposit box or hidden under a mattress or a mason jar in the backyard. But I think it's really important to make sure that you're prepared for that, because what you'll see quite a bit now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't know who did this Poppy deal, but, $1.7 billion is a pretty big deal, yeah. Right? But what if you received a $1 million life insurance check proceeds from your grandfather passing away or whatever? It's important, and I think especially if you take a look at people who hit the lotto, which I kind of feel like the only way you hit the lottery anymore is you got to live in California.
It does seem that way, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like they're the only folks who win. But on the same side, I mean, you probably have to hit the lottery to live there, right? It's so expensive. So. But I think one of the first things that they tell you to do is to seek different types of counsel. Get you a financial advisor, contact an attorney, this, that, and the other. But it's important because with your situation, that everybody's going to have a different one. It's important to take a look at some different avenues. We talk about, if one of the ways you want to handle your money is to leave it to kids or grandkids, life insurance is about the best way to do it, because nobody's got their hands out for that life insurance proceeds. Whereas when it comes to IRAs or pre-tax money or other types of investment accounts, potentially there could be some restrictions as far as how long you can keep them and that kind of thing. So, if you received $1 million lump sum payout from a life insurance policy, more than likely that's going to be tax-free to you. So what do you do with it from that point forward? I wouldn't recommend you just take that and stick it under your mattress or back to the mason jar again. But, do you have debt? Do you have high interest debt? Is that something that you need to work on? One of the questions that we get, I think probably every day in our office is, should I pay off my mortgage? Right. Mm-hmm. So everything's about the numbers, and it's about what makes the most sense to you. But I think it's very important for people not to just kind of let it sit there and not work. Your money always needs to work for you. But depending on your situation, it's going to be kind of where the recommendations will come from. Student loans are something I think the last few years they thought were going to be forgiven, and most of them didn't. Go figure, there's another politician promise that doesn't happen. But, there's a lot to it. So I think, when it comes to most average Americans, they're going to have some sort of high interest debt, whether that's credit cards, whether, now a mortgage or car note or whatever. Maybe that's something to take a look at. But before you make any kind of decision like that, I find it very important to find yourself a financial fiduciary that can sit down with you and see the grand scope of your situation and see what could be the best as far as that large inheritance.
And I would say to a lot of people, I mean, if you do receive a large inheritance from whoever, you really don't have much control over certain things about that. But if you're selling a business or if you're selling a property, you need to understand that not all that sales price is going to be yours. Mm-hmm. Guess what? Uncle Sam is going to have his hands out there in that. So now you kind of need to pre-plan maybe a different strategies. How can we reduce those gains as much as we can so you don't have to pay so much taxes on it? So those are some things that you have a little bit of control over the tax situation, and you need to have an advisor that can help guide you through some of that and some of those questions that you may not have thought about. So I think the biggest thing that a lot of people need to understand is that life's going to give you different challenges, and you need to seek the advice to somebody that can help you, guide you, if you don't understand how either the tax situation works or how many people's going to have their hands out if they did win the lotto. How many people's going to have their hand out and say, oh, I just really need some money here. Poor pitiful me. And you're going to be hit with that. So just be prepared for that. But sit down and strategize with an advisor that understands your goals and your plans down the road. I mean, if you're still working and maybe you didn't have $1 billion of gains because you sold a piece of property, or maybe you just need to kind of understand you're still going to be working maybe, so why not max out your retirement plans? why not reevaluate when you're going to retire? I mean, those are all things that we can sit down and help people as fiduciaries and going through our roadmap process to kind of let you see the light at the end of the tunnel. But you don't want to tie everything up if you sell one piece of property into another piece of property because it's not liquid. You're still going to have money to live and do the things that you want to do. So you're always going to have some liquid type of savings that you can get your hands on without any complications or any situations that you have to worry about. And just understand those liquid accounts is probably going to be taxable to you every year. So you need to understand that, which a lot of people don't understand the difference between qualified plans and a non-qualified plan, tax deferred versus taxable account. So those are all things when we sit down with people, we explain these type of situations. And you also need to diversify your investments. You just can't have all your eggs in one basket, as the old saying used to be. And because guess what? There's a lot of people in this area where we live that work for one or two different companies, and they have all their money in their stock. And which I'm not saying it's wrong, but guess what? If your stock, you have one stock in there and it dropped 50%, guess what happened to your portfolio? It dropped 50%.
Yeah.
So you don't have any diversification at that point in time. I'm not saying the company is wrong or it's not profitable. It's just the value of that company has dropped.
Yeah, and not only just a large windfall, right? It could be something smaller. Like I'm currently working with somebody who took an early retirement package, if you will, and now for the next 13 months, he's collecting his salary from the old employer, right? So it's almost $6,000 a month for 13 months, and they're coming in and trying to figure out how things will look. He's 58 and he's getting closer. I mean, he's probably I think he wants to work till 65. This is one of the gentlemen that I think will probably work longer than 65 just because he wants to, right? But that's one of the big questions. Okay, now I got two paychecks coming in because now he's working at another company. He goes, well, what do I need to do with this? Because, I don't need it. Now I'm getting double paid. I've never had this happen, so please help. That's a good place to be, right? And I think, Chris, if you and I got two paychecks on Friday instead of, just one check, I think we'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, I would be a little cautious that it was a mistake at first, but then I would use it in my favor, yeah.
For sure. So, that's one of the things that we see quite a bit, especially with the federal government, right? So, depending on what package, because there's been, I think, a total of 3 or 4 of them. There's probably more to come. But, if you're still going to maintain your salary for the next, 6, 9, maybe 12 months, and you go back to work somewhere else, well, don't just squander that money away, right? Don't just go take a couple trips to Europe and Asia and whatever else and come back, right? Do something smart with it. Now, I'm not saying that you don't enjoy life. We all want to enjoy life. But on the same side, this is an opportunity. And that's what it's all about is, there's so many opportunities out there that people aren't aware of because they're just, 9 to 5, they're doing the daily grind and not paying attention a whole lot. Well, if you get the extra windfall or you get some other opportunity, take advantage of it and not just let it sit there in the bank, not let it sit there. Tax deferral is a big thing. What if you could set up yourself your own pension for later on down the line? So there's a lot of things that come into that, but you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't take the initiative to, give somebody a call or sit down and get that guidance or that advice, how are you going to know what's out there? So if you get this really nice opportunity of, 13 additional paychecks or, $1 million life insurance policy or whatever, if you don't take advantage of that when it was a really great opportunity, well, I feel like it's kind of shame on you.
And I would say one of the things that we do have a lot of, it brings into mind of a gentleman that we were working with, and he had decided to retire at the end of the year. And at that point in time, he went home and cut his grass after work and decided to help his elderly neighbor cut his grass. So he cut the grass, sat on his front porch in his easy chair, and had a massive heart attack. His daughter had no idea of what kind of money he was worth and found our number with his records and called us. And all of a sudden, she found out that he had $1.5 million in his retirement account. She's 20-some years old. What do you think she thought about. She had no idea what to do. So that's where we came in and said, all right, here's the plan. This is what he's planning on doing. This is how it's going to help you down the road. Just understand, with all the new rules and regulations of retirement planning with Secure Act and all that kind of stuff, which she had no idea about, because, 20 years old, who's thinking about retiring, right, Chris?
Sure,
I mean, you're not thinking about retiring at 20-some years old, are you?
I wasn't back then, but
But anyway, those are things that you've never had any experience. And for most things in my life, experience has been the best teacher. You can look at some books and you can look at TV, but experience is your best teacher. If you've never had any experience with large windfalls like that, you need some help. You need some guidance. You need somebody to help guide you to do the things that maybe your father wanted you to do and understand. And now you've got the opportunity to.
But also, too, that there's mistakes that can be made that are irreversible, right? So if you make the wrong decision on a payout or taxation or whatever, well, do you think the IRS truly cares if you made that mistake? No. Well, good for you. You made the mistake. Now we get extra money from you. So, that's why it's important to sit down and get the guidance.
And I would say there's so much information out there that may not be correct for you. One thing that came into mind is one of the ladies that came in from our television program came in, we were having a conversation, and the conversation ended up saying that her husband had retired, and within a year he had died. And the advisor told her to go ahead and sell the account out and take the money, do whatever you wanted to with it. Now, it was an IRA account, and I happened to ask her, I said, did he not talk to you about the tax implications of that? She said, no, he did not, but I found out 3 years later. I said, what do you mean? She said, I got a letter from the IRS saying that I owed his back taxes, and I didn't understand why. And I said, well, I knew where he was working, so I kind of knew what the account was worth. I said, just out of curiosity, what was the account value when he died? And it was over $600,000. So guess what? I looked at her and I said, you had to pay over $300,000 in taxes, not counting penalties, correct? She said, yeah, and it's taken me 10 years to pay it off. So advice out there, you need to make sure it is correct. And like Tim said, it's irreversible, irrevocable, whatever you want to call it. It does harm a person financially.
We've spoken before when we talk about the retirement roadmap process, the detours that can happen along the way in retirement. And a lot of the time we talk about the negative ones, the market downturns, taxation increases, the loss of a loved one or a source of income, things like that. There are certainly positive detours as well. A windfall is a great example of that. And we want to make sure at the end of the day with any of those detours, we continue to stay on track. It doesn't derail the overall plan. Now, mind you, if you get a $1.4 billion windfall, maybe your final destination is going to look a little different than it did beforehand. But at the end of the day, you still want to have a plan in play to make sure that business partners like Uncle Sam don't get more than they're entitled to, or that it's not improperly squandered, or just the growth potential, things like that. But this is something, part of the process that the team, Ralph and Tim Short, can help walk you through. All it takes to get started is setting up time to speak with them. WelcomeHomeFP.com is the website where you can do that. Find out more about that retirement roadmap process. Reach out there, WelcomeHomeFP.com, or give a call, 804-635-3550. A couple minutes ago, Tim, you were talking about a gentleman who's working longer, past 65, because he wants to. And earlier in the show, we mentioned Warren Buffett. Be remiss if we did not mention the fact that earlier this month, just last week actually, he mentioned that at the end of 2025, he's going to be stepping down as CEO of his company, Berkshire Hathaway. But perhaps the retirement of 94-year-old Warren Buffett is a bit exaggerated. Here's what he told shareholders at their annual meeting about his successor, Greg Abel.
The time has arrived where Greg should become the chief executive officer of the company at year end, and I would still hang around and could conceivably be useful in a few cases, but the final word would be what Greg said.
So stepping down as the CEO, but not stepping away entirely. So it voted to keep Buffett. The board did vote to keep Buffett on as chairman, which sounds kind of like a phased retirement. How does something like that work for the rest of us? Again, keeping in mind we're probably not as successful financially as Warren Buffett, but have you helped clients with the phased retirement process?
Yeah, we've seen it before, but I can assure you, at 94, if I'm fortunate enough to make it to 94, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be working, right? And if I'm fortunate enough to make it there, I probably wouldn't be able to get up out of bed and go to work every day. But yeah, I mean, it is hard to kind of cut off the faucet all at once, right? So, I think that kind of goes back to the emotional side or, the social aspect of, okay, what am I really going to do? Okay, maybe let's go part-time. And we've got quite a few clients that, they retired from their main job and now they go back to, I don't know, Lowe's or Home Depot and they're working there part-time, maybe 20 hours a week. And, there's other opportunities out there, but there's a lot of people that also want to volunteer and do some charity work too. So people want to stay busy. They don't want to just sit at home and not do anything. We still have to spend our time wisely, so to speak. But, a lot of financial aspects will come into that as well because, taking a look at your total income, maybe you didn't do the right job or maybe you didn't plan right and you still need the part-time income or, maybe instead of working as the CEO, now you're stepping back and taking a little bit of a pay cut but continue to work, 40 hours a week or whatever. So everybody's going to be in a different position, but Social Security, I think, is one of those things that is often overlooked because there's always the Debbie Downers in the room that think that Social Security is not going to be around for forever. Or, they're going to slash prices or benefits or whatever. We don't know and we don't have control of that. But, if you're not full retirement age and you want to go ahead and step away or fully retire, or excuse me, not fully retire, but you want to work part-time, there's going to be income limits there. So there's a lot of things to take a look at, but there's a lot of people, I hate to use the phrase cold turkey, but a lot of people don't want to just do cold turkey retirement, right? They want to still have something to get up every morning for, still making a little bit of money on the side, but, more of the social aspect, not just the financial aspect.
I think a lot of people, particularly business owners, the people that I work with, they've been doing this for 20, 30 years, and it's really difficult just to step aside unless you actually sell the business outright.
Sure.
But it's very difficult for a lot of people to give up the goose that laid the golden egg. So phased retirement really does work better for them because they get to step back. In fact, I just met with somebody yesterday that has a company, her and her husband started. He's no longer around because he passed away a long time ago, but she maintained a business. And now her sons are involved in it, and now they're looking at kind of phasing out. And like she says, I cannot give it up because of what I've done all these years. Nobody has the same wavelength that I've got with the business and how it works. But I do want to step back from the 50, 60 hours a week that I've been doing. So, and we've had a long conversation about that over the several months. And she said, what I'm trying to do now? In fact, I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'm going down to the beach at the beach house for about 3 weeks. Now, I'll still be on the phone every once in a while, but I'm going to test this thing out, see if it can be managed like this, so I don't have to do all this stuff that we normally have to do on a daily basis. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's based on what you're trying to do, how the business is going to work. And, even other companies that will come and owners will come and sit down and talk, and we just have this conversation about what are your plans? How are you going to step aside or give it to the next generation? You worked for so many years. How are you going to get paid for that? So, I mean, those are all conversations to have, particularly on business owners. And, I would say small business owners, but I don't like that phrase. It's more closely held businesses. That means you don't have the Warren Buffetts and the billions of dollars and all the stuff. But, if your business is worth $3 or $4 or $5 million, it's still a big business to you. Okay. It may not be to the corporate world, but guess what? It is yours and it's your money, and you just need to be aware. How are you going to step aside and allow this business to continue to operate without you in it? And that's called phased retirement. And that's a lot of things that we sit down and talk with people.
Dad's right. So there's a lot of people who've, built up the business and they don't want to see that crumble, whether that's being passed to a child or a business partner or whatever. But I think their mindset is nobody cares as much as I do. And I think I can kind of agree to that to a point, because we talk about it quite a bit, as having the employer versus the employee mindset. And there is a little bit of concern there. So I do believe, with the business owners, I think the transition or the phased or, whatever you want to say, I think that's what you'll see pretty common, because, generally the eldest clients that we see coming into our doors, they are those business owners that have been doing it for 40, 50, maybe even 60 years and just having a hard time relinquishing their duties, so to speak.
And I would say, even farmers. I had a farmer that is 80 years old, and he is still out there planting 1,600 acres of crops at his age, because you know why? He enjoys it, number one. But number two, they can't find a help to do the things that needs to be done. So you kind of every once in a while stuck in having to do things that you maybe not would handle somebody else if they had the availability of help.
It's not to say that, small business owners, obviously they've put their blood, sweat, and, tears into the company, and that sweat equity and things like that. And it can be kind of difficult to relinquish the reins from that, or just to step back from going, 100 miles an hour to absolutely nothing. Also in the working world, if you're putting in 40 hours a week, as we talked about earlier, not necessarily knowing what you want to retire to, you hadn't thought about that. Perhaps the phased retirement is right for you. It's kind of like test driving a car. Make sure that this is what you want to do, and if not, you're continuing to work. You're putting in some time. But again, phased retirement may not be right for everybody out there. There may be people out there who say, "I can't wait to stop working," and that is okay too. There's no wrong answer, but you want to have a plan in place one way or another. And the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners can craft that plan around what your desires are. That starts with a phone call, 804-635-3550. Technically, it starts with you tuning in just by joining us today. You're showing that you're thinking about it. But the next step is letting them begin that planning process, 804-635-3550. Or you can also go online to the website, set up a time there at welcomehomefp.com. Tim, you mentioned charity work, and for over 25 years, almost 25 years, Bill Murray and his brothers, they've held a charity golf tournament in St. Augustine, Florida, to raise money for local charities there. We had a chance to actually sit down with them and ask, after all the little expenses of getting to the event of itself, what fee is the most irritating? Here's what they said.
Sometimes when you check out of a hotel, you get a parking fee when you don't have a car. That's, to me, is the most surprising.
Resort fees at my family's houses.
Well, it's got to be overdrafting, right? Okay. Yeah. No, I hate to be kicked when I'm down.
A lot of different fees out there. It's one thing, to have to pay for something that is coming, like, a check bag at the airport or things like that. There's a whole other situation when you have no idea and it's hidden in small print, like in a prospectus that no one reads in their retirement accounts. How do you help your clients fight or expose, first of all, and then fight excessive financial fees?
Well, I think you got to uncover them, number one. But I tell you, I hope that there is no resort fees at family members' homes. That would be pretty devastating.
Take a shot for sure, yeah.
Right, exactly. So, we were fortunate enough 2 years ago to go out to that event, which was fantastic. I tell you, the Murray family, the Murray brothers, are just an absolute hoot. I mean, they're very, very fun to interact with. On top of, they're pretty good golfers too. So, pretty cool. But anyway, we talk about it all the time, and most people have no idea, what they're spending in fees. I had one now a client, but a couple months ago, she came in and brought in her statement, and it was actually an inheritance. Speaking of a windfall, she ended up getting about $500,000 as an inheritance from her parents. So she stuck it. For some odd reason, the advisor that the parents had did not want to continue the accounts. Not quite sure what the deal was there. Obviously, we don't know. We weren't there. We don't know what the conversation looked like. But she ended up moving it to a bank. And, we go through the roadmap process and talk about some recommendations. And then, of course, fees are always one of the biggest questions that we get, which is understandable. And taking a look at the statement, she goes, well, they're only charging me, I can't recall exactly what it was, but it was a quarterly statement, and I believe it was like 75 cents was the fee. And I looked at her and I go, can anybody survive, any person, any individual, any company, by only charging on almost a $500,000 account 75 cents for 3 months? She goes, no. I go, okay, so let's peel this back a little bit. Let's take a look at these funds. And we start going through some reporting. And she goes, wow, I had no idea. And I was like, well, you should, because this all should have been provided. And it could have. And she just didn't pay attention to it because there's a lot of people that don't. But I think that's what's important is you've got to peel back that onion and really see what you're working with, because it's not what you see actually coming out. You got to see what's also built in.
And I would say there's also cost to not doing the best for you, because like as Tim said, maybe 75 cents was the actual cost of that, which I seriously doubt. But let's suppose that you're only making 50 cents during that 3 months when you could have been making 8 or 10% somewhere else. So that's another what we call opportunity cost that a lot of people don't realize, that yes, you might be able to not have any expenses there, but it's going to cost you in the end because you're not making as much money as you should.
We opened the show talking about market volatility and, how that is making some people uncomfortable because that is a loss in their balances. But it's not just market performance that can affect your retirement accounts. Taxation is a loss in your retirement accounts. Excessive fees is a loss in your retirement accounts. Medicare premium, estate planning, although, maybe not necessarily for you, but for your loved ones, that could be a loss in the balance in the overall accounts. And it can be, with a proper plan in place, mitigated, if not outright avoided, but at least being aware of what those fees are, what those costs are, and then finding a way to hopefully minimize those. That is what that retirement roadmap process is all about. That is what Ralph and Tim, the entire team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, creates for clients, maintains for clients, and works with clients day in and day out. And it is as simple to get started as reaching out to welcomehomefp.com or giving a call, 804-635-3550. Once again, 804-635-3550. Maybe you already have a plan in place, and as you're getting closer and closer towards that retirement or phased retirement or whatever that aspect looks like, you just want to make sure. You want to call back. You want to do what Ed Koch was doing in the 70s, saying, how am I doing? Am I going to be okay? Do I need to make some plans one way or another? Do I need to make some changes? Second opinion is invaluable, and it's something that they could provide as well, but you have to take that initiative and reach out to them. 804-635-3550, or going online to the website, again, welcomehomefp.com. As always, we appreciate you joining us, spending part of the day here on Aspire to Retire with Ralph and Tim Short. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Hope you stay safe out there. Gentlemen, appreciate the time as always. And as we wrap up, I do want to leave you with the final word.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and we appreciate your time as well. But we've talked a lot about uncertainty and a whole lot of change going on, estate planning, Roth conversions. These things are very important and can be very important for your retirement plan. So, if anything you heard today kind of struck a nerve, if you will, give us a call. We'd love to see what kind of value we can provide for you. We bring you into the office and we can create your very own retirement roadmap. But pick up the phone, give us a call, visit the website, attend one of the first Friday events. We'd love the opportunity to meet with you. So we want to thank everybody for listening and take care.
All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decision, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication or future results. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Welcome Home Financial Partners and Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC. The information contained in this material has been derived from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness and does not purport to a complete analysis of the materials discussed. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to the implementation. Each individual investor's situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstance. Advisor services are offered by Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Virginia. Being registered as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Insurance products and services are offered through WPI Holding, Virginia Insurance License Number 138509, an affiliated company. The information contained herein should in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to any residents of any state other than the state of Virginia or where otherwise legally permitted. Welcome Home Wealth Advisors, LLC and Welcome Home Financial Partners are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any government agency.